Hello, everyone, and welcome to the VAW-VRC Foundation's Oral History Project. The goal of this project is to capture and preserve significant events and their associated stories from the VAW-VRC community's illustrious history, and to make them available to the community and to the general public. I'm Joe McNamara of the VAW-VRC Foundation, and it's my honor to introduce today's interviewees, Terry Magee and Art Moreau. Terry and Art are going to tell the story of how a routine night landing pilot training flight turned into a very dangerous and nearly disastrous flight, and how they survived it. At the time this incident took place in 1983, there was a replacement air group or RAG squadron on the West Coast, VAW-110, at the then Naval Air Station Miramar, and a RAG squadron on the East Coast, VAW-120, at Naval Air Station Norfolk. The flight that is the subject of today's story was conducted by VAW-110 out of NAS Miramar. Art was the student pilot going through the RAG curriculum, and Terry was the instructor pilot. About our narrators. Terry Magee retired as a captain in the U.S. Navy after a long and distinguished career, and is a legend in the VAW-VRC community. Terry went through the Navy Aviation Officer Candidate Program, receiving his designation as a naval aviator in 1971. Over the next 27 years, he accumulated over 6,000 flight hours and over 1,000 carrier landings. He also had the opportunity to command 4 organizations: VAW-112, VAW-110, the East Coast RAG, or West Coast RAG, the amphibious ship Duluth, which had a crew of 800 and a complement of 1,100 Marines, and the aircraft carrier USS Kitty Hawk, which had a crew of about 5,500 men and women. He also filled a number of key Navy and joint billets before his retirement from active duty. Post-Navy, he served in leadership positions in the defense industry and has generously donated his time as a member of the board of directors of numerous nonprofits, with an emphasis on those serving today's active duty military members. Arthur S. Moreau is a California native born in Coronado, California. He was commissioned in 1977 in September out of Officer Candidate School in Newport, Rhode Island. After a tour in the Combat Information Center officer on the USS Kilauea, he went to flight school and received his Wings of Gold in August of 1982. He reported to VAW-110 in September 1982 and joined VAW-116 at Miramar in October 1983. After that tour and a stint as an instructor pilot at VT4, he left active duty service and attended law school. He's been licensed to practice law in California since 1993 and Washington, D.C. since 1996. He's also been licensed to practice before the United States Supreme Court since 1999. Art has been a shareholder in the law firm of Kleindienst Attorneys since 1998. Terry and Art, we're really looking forward to your story. Over to you.
Go ahead, Art. Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to talk this afternoon about a flight that Terry and I took when I was a RAG student. I was well into the syllabus, and Terry was the instructor pilot on that hop, as was common during those days. As the student pilot, I briefed the hop, and it was going to be working up for FCLPs. It was a night hop. Terry and I decided that we were going to go out to San Clemente Island. So we got together, briefed the hop, went down, signed out the airplane, went out, did a thorough pre-flight as always. We had a good, strong crew chief there, plane captain. Got in the airplane in the old hangars down there it was then, like you said, NAS Miramar, and took ourselves out to the end of the duty runway and took off into the night. Just finishing up the sunset as we headed out into the MOA west over the Pacific Ocean. Took about 40 minutes to get there, half an hour to get out to San Clemente, and it started to get real dark. San Clemente, you know, at night when there's nothing out there, it's pitch black, there are no visual cues, just the runway lights, and you could swear that the island's moving in. It's just the back end of the ship. So we got out there, nice easy night break, and into the left-hand turn, and on the downwind set up for to do a series of night landings up there at San Clemente. We got through several of them, just standard 2-engine landings, different flap configurations, and we're doing just fine. You know, hit the downwind, came off the mark, turn, hit the approach, and we went through a number of touch and goes. And then at one point, then Commander Magee decided to make things a little more interesting for me, so we started pulling engines. And so we're on the downwind, left downwind, looking down at the runway, and he pulls back the starboard engine. So I've got a single engine approach going, coming off the 180, and we start into the, you know, got the airplane trimmed up the way it was supposed to be, got ourselves down through the turn, onto the approach and onto the glide slope. And as we came down and touched down, I think I was probably, probably a little long, a little fast.
Long and a little fast.
And as I touched down, the main mounts hit the deck, and all of a sudden, the instrument panel, you know, on my side, I was in the left seat, and it just flopped out. It's hinged at the bottom, and so it's in the screws that set it are up in the top, and it just falls back, hits the back of the pedestal, and at which point Terry says, "My airplane." I let go. He takes both the throttles, slams them all the way forward, and at that point, I don't know how it was for you, but for me, you know, sometimes when you get in those situations where everything kind of starts to slow down a little bit for you. And so things slowed down for me, and I go, you know, and you said, I've got the airplane, so we're powered up, but the nose is up, the yoke is back. He can't push the yoke forward. And so, and I'm looking, I can see what's happened. It's back and it's hung up because on the back of the yoke where the electrical wires come up out, it was covered by this fiberglass flap. Kind of looked like a little dome, like a little Nike swoosh on its side. And so at that point, and I have my head at this point, I'm inside the cockpit. I'm not really looking outside, and there's not a whole lot to see anyway. You can see the runway lights, and there's like this little hangar kind of off to the left. And Terry's just going, you know, I don't remember what it's, I know it was calm. I remember that, and saying, you know, get it up, get it up. And I have my hands, I take my feet off of the rudder pedals so I can get them square on the deck. And I had my gloves on, and I just started slamming the top of the instrument panel up. And just, you know, and what I was saying was, give me a little more, give me a little more, because I needed to have the yoke back a little bit. And then finally, I can feel it start to rip. And so I'm just slamming this thing, and I'm at one point beating it with the bottoms of my fists until finally the back of the fiberglass breaks free. I can pull it up, push it into place. Terry takes the yoke, pushes them forward. And as soon as we get level again, the airplane starts flying. And at that point, we were over the end of the runway and kind of where the rocks were on the departure end. The airplane starts flying, and then we just go into a left-hand turn in the downwind, and Terry's got the airplane, and he lands it from the right seat.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. I was doing fine, and when we touched down on that single engine, he was a little long, a little fast. And when the dash came down, or the instrument panel came down, it jammed the yoke all the way back, and the airplane just leapt into the sky. And there was no way we could re-land the airplane, so we were stuck with it airborne. So I put full power in the airplane, raised the gear, flaps went to full, trying to reduce the stall speed as much as possible. And I knew the instrument panel was jamming the yoke, and I was hoping, telling Art to get it up, get up. And he finally said, give me a little more, which meant pull the yoke back. So I pulled one last time, as far back as I could, and that allowed Art to get the instrument panel up. About that time, we were probably about 250 feet. The rudder shakers were on, and the right wing was falling off, just like predicted in an E2 stall. and the airspeed was decreasing below 90 knots. As soon as Art got the instrument panel up, pushed the nose forward, and the airplane recovered just as it advertised it would. It really recovered very quickly, probably dipped down to about 150 feet in recovering the airplane. Then we came back up to pattern altitude, came around and landed. But I can say without reservation that we were just a couple of seconds from becoming a permanent part of San Clemente. And it's kind of interesting. I happened to look out, and anybody that's flown out to San Clemente may remember there was this gigantic frog on the right side of the runway that some of the station people had gone out there and painted rocks to make it look like a frog.
The SEAL team demo pits out
See
there.
that demo pit out there, and we were about to become a permanent part of that display. Now the bad thing about it is if we had actually not recovered the airplane had crashed, it's been very hard for them to reconstitute what had happened, because a lot of I don't know if they would ever have known that the reason for the accident, if we'd had one, was because the instrument panel came loose and came down. Now, we recovered the airplane at San Clemente. We called the squadron, told them what had happened. They sent an airplane out for Art and I. We flew back home, went out the next day to get the airplane. And what had happened, we did an investigation. And what had happened is the AEs, the aviation electricians, had been behind the instrument panel replacing an instrument. And when they had put the instrument panel back up, they had put the screws in, but they had not tightened them down. And then due to the vibration of just the normal vibration of the E2 and then the touch and goes, those screws had backed out. One of them had come out, and then on the single engine, the other one came out, and that just the dashboard, the instrument panel came flying down into Art's lap. So I don't think we'd be here today if Art wasn't a big, strong guy that had been able to push the instrument panel up. And Art's right. The whole thing happened in a matter of probably 10 or 15 seconds, but it seemed like an eternity. But the airplane was about to stall. There's no doubt in my mind. Anyways, we're very fortunate to be here, and the squadron instituted a local SOP, and we put in an ATOPS change to make sure that people checked the instrument panels before they went flying from then on.
Yeah. It was but it was interesting because just as the nose came up and really the airspeed started to decrease, and you were right, and I couldn't see it, but I could feel it, you know, with the right wing starting to drop a little bit. But at that point, Terry's kind of flying the airplane with his feet. You know, he's got the rudders working to keep us, you know, in that, you know, as centered up as he can as the airspeed decreased and it deteriorated, we kind of approached stall. But at least, you know, we weren't losing. You know, I don't know if you had aileron control, but I could feel in my butt, I could feel it moving with the rudders until, you know. But you're right, it just we're just pounding away, and I just was. You know, I thought we were fairly cool and collected, you know. No one was screaming and no one was going, "What the hell," you know. And it was just like, okay, we've got a problem. We know what the problem is. Let's fix the problem. And I thought it was reasonably good crew coordination there. We're here to talk about it today.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't have to clean out our flight suits afterwards, but I think it took, for me, it took a while after the flight to actually realize what we had gone through and how close we had come to being a part of an aircraft accident investigation. I think probably it was that night when I got home that I finally kind of hit me how close we'd come to actually not living through it.
I don't know that I was smart enough to know what was going on at that point, or experienced enough. All I know is that they sent an airplane out to get us, and I wanted to fly, and Terry Joe wouldn't let me. You know, you sit right there, and I'll take us home to Miramar. I said, yes, sir.
I remember the next day after we went out and got the airplane, and they did an inspection and buttoned it back up. We flew it back. The petty officer that was in charge of the aviation electrician shop at our VAW-110, and I was maintenance officer at the time. a young first-class petty officer named Ashley, great young man. He came up to me crying. He felt so bad about the fact that they had not tightened those screws down and the QA had not caught it. So one of those things, lesson learned. But he was pretty beside himself, and I appreciated that. So anyways, that's our story.
Yep. As they say, NATOPS is written in blood.
Yeah.
Thankfully, it wasn't ours that day.
Yep. So we're very lucky to be here and to tell you this story, and hopefully it'll add something to the lore and the history of the community.
Well, thanks, guys. That's an amazing story, and it's also amazing that you were able to fight through that in such a short amount of time and save yourselves in the aircraft. Really appreciate you coming aboard today and telling us that great story. It's one of many hundreds and thousands of great aviation stories from our community that we're looking forward to bringing to our folks. So thanks to the two of you for a great story, beautifully told. That's
Thanks,
it.
Joe. Thanks for setting it up.
Thanks, guys.